Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming to our talk today about how ServiceNow puts trusted AI to work. The Director of AI Architecture and Services at ServiceNow Digital Technology couldn't make it this afternoon, so unfortunately it's stuck with me to present this from start to end, but I'm very excited to get into the way that we at ServiceNow are leveraging confidential compute and opaque systems. Just before I continue, this slide contains a safe harbor notice for forward-looking statements. It's a standard disclaimer that some of what I'll be talking about today is based on current expectations and may contain risks and uncertainties. For anyone interested, please refer to the slide in more depth. Now, onto the main content. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a machine learning engineer for ServiceNow in our digital technology organization. What that means is that we build solutions that support all of ServiceNow's internal employees. And our goal is to streamline business processes, increase operational efficiency, and enhance our employee experiences. At ServiceNow, our employees are customer zero, and so it's very crucial that we get this right when developing AI production-ready solutions for our employees. The challenge when doing this, though, particularly with data that relates to the way that we roll out our AI solutions, is that productionizing AI with enterprise data requires solving for many obstacles. Data sensitivity, data access control, fragmentation, and ownership are all problems that we need to overcome when providing and building robust AI solutions. And I'll dive into a little bit more about how we view those problems in the next slide. But the solution for us is to build secure LLM-enabled systems that automatically navigate interconnected data. And we've been able to do this powered by opaque systems. And the impact of this can't be understated. We've seen faster time to production, decreased cost to deploy and maintain our critical tech infrastructure, and critically, in the spirit of today's conference, provable data privacy, security, and compliance with internal policy and external regulations. Let's dive a little bit further into the way that we view the problem in terms of productionizing AI data in the enterprise. Clearly, transmitting confidential data to third-party LLM services increases risk. Data sensitivity, therefore, is a core obstacle that we need to address when building any production-ready AI systems. On top of that, data access control is another problem that we face within the enterprise. Everybody knows that AI accuracy relies on data, often from a multitude of sources within the enterprise that have different controls and restrictions, particularly with the ownership of it. On top of that, and as Aaron Fulkerson has mentioned today, data within the enterprise is very often siloed into different sources, and therefore, when we manually aggregate and anonymize data from different systems before processing, we are exposed to vulnerabilities. That's the data fragmentation that we address in the enterprise. Finally, data ownership. Because ServiceNow is a large enterprise company, there are a multiplicity of owners who are hesitant to risk data exposure, which creates additional churn and approvals when trying to build and productionize any enterprise AI data. Fortunately for us, Opaque solves these problems. They have verifiable privacy, security, and compliance, and the LLM gateway that I'm going to talk about within the coming slides is powered on AMD's SEV SMP, and we get the security guarantees from that. Additionally as well, there are less API endpoints with the opaque systems that we work with than I have fingers on my right hand. It's scalable, it's extensible, and it integrates with any of our data sources. On top of that, the out-of-the-box solution that's ready to use allows simplified maintenance and deployment for us, which saves us a lot of time as opposed to independently developing that and hosting it ourselves. Finally, real-time data analytics and the streaming capacity of opaque systems allows us to maximize our data efficiency. Now let me dive into our use case. For context, before I was an ML engineer building out this solution, I used to work in ServiceNow's sales commissions division. I was tasked with building and configuring all of the way that we pay our sales reps, from the way that their bonuses are configured, the way that their salaries are configured, the way that their targets are configured. And for a company like ServiceNow, who has over 6,000 sales reps, we span multiple geographies, and we have hundreds of product lines, I'm sure that you can imagine this is a relatively complex process. What emerges out of that process are thousands of questions from those same sales reps that want clarity on their regular day-to-day deal-making process, whether or not they're eligible for a deal, whether they'll receive a renewal bonus, whether they'll receive some form of bonus that they believe they're eligible for, whether or not why they got paid X instead of Y for this deal that they were working on. These things we call CREQs, commission requests. And we have a dedicated team of commission ops analysts who answer these questions. But because we're working with a sales force that's thousands strong, we get thousands of questions, and therefore there's a limited capacity for us to be able to answer these with manual intervention. Let me give you an example, just to drive that point home a little bit further, about a typical case where a seller will raise a commissions request. Meet Nick. Nick was promoted to sales manager during this year's annual compensation review. A new plan document is generated with updated quota, salary, and plan specifics. These are all of the crucial things that Nick needs to know and accept before he begins to sell ServiceNow's products. Nick notices a discrepancy on his compensation between the ACR and plan document, so he logs a CREQ. He wants to get clarification on why there is this discrepancy. That goes to our commissions ops team, who receive that CREQ and add it to a queue, probably along with hundreds of other CREQs that day, and they wait to get back to they work to get back to Nick. Sometimes querying the sales database that has all of Nick's personal information in, his bonus, his target incentive, all of that data, or sometimes the policy documents that Nick was issued at the beginning of the year, but perhaps aren't as fresh in his mind. This process can take up to 4 days, based on the size of the queue that Nick's request got added to, and also based on the complexity of his response. All the meanwhile, Nick's meant to be selling ServiceNow products and focused on delivering as much value to ServiceNow in terms of generating new deals, but he has to think about this commission request that's pending. Finally, it gets resolved, and Nick can continue to sell ServiceNow's products. As I mentioned earlier, I work in DT within ServiceNow, which means that we build solutions that aim to improve employee experience and maximize operational efficiency. We see this as a perfect example of a case where GenAI building an LLM-supported solution will add a lot of value, not only to Nick, but also to the commission ops analysts who have to deal with these requests each day, with the caveat that it needs to be guaranteed by confidential compute. Let's run through how that solution might look in what we've built today that allows for us to have confidential compute guaranteed commission request inquiries processed by a generative AI solution. Nick submits a question to the LLM application that we've built at ServiceNow. That data then runs through Opaque's gateway. It's stripped of its personally identifiable information, and it's sent to the third-party LLM to generate the query that we're looking for to go back and query our sales database, which is Venkatachalam. That third-party LLM sends back that response. Opaque then reinserts that personally identifiable information into it, and it lands back at our LLM application. Now we know what to query when we go to Venkatachalam, which has millions and millions of sales records. Now we know how to dial into exactly what relates to Nick's prompt and Nick's question. Venkatachalam, our ICM system that has all of this information, returns that to our LLM application. We then format the prompt along with Nick's query and process that information and send it through back to the LLM to generate a response to Nick's question. Opaque, meanwhile, redacts proprietary information from this prompt as it passes it to the third-party LLM. That then gets sent back, finally with the response that Nick's looking for to answer his CREQ. And finally, that LLM application that we built at ServiceNow can serve that back to Nick. Nick has gotten an answer to his question in minutes as opposed to potentially 4 days. The value that this provides for ServiceNow is huge. Not only have we been able to reduce CREQ times by over 75%, and I'm using the metric as days there, this is resolved in minutes as opposed to potentially 4 days. So the multiple is actually far higher than that. And we've maintained confidential computing capability whilst doing this process. Additionally, the intangible benefit is very clear in the employee satisfaction that we've been able to generate. Now Nick can get an answer to his question in minutes, and he can focus on selling ServiceNow's products. He doesn't need to worry about getting that resolution to the CREQ that he logged 4 days ago. Meanwhile, we've also enabled the commission ops team to prioritize additional high-value fulfilling work because their queue for CREX is far less. Finally, and the beauty of it all, in spirit of this conference, is that we've been able to maintain the integrity of sensitive sales data without exposing any of it to the third-party LLM service provider. And to cap it all off, Opaque has been what has allowed us to do this. We've achieved faster time to value by extending our existing infrastructure with an easy-to-update, customizable code base that has integrated onto our existing tech stack. We've lowered our cost by implementing a turnkey enterprise solution that reduces our need for in-house specialists to both deploy and maintain a working solution of our own. And finally, we've reduced our risks. We have provable compliance with external regulations and internal governance policies that have allowed us to enact and build a secure, provable, and private LLM system that responds to sales commissions requests. Thank you so much for your time. I have some more time for questions if anyone has any. Thank you for joining today.